Recently, I received a comment on one of my videos asking, if you could make a mascot horror game, how would you make it? And this question piqued my curiosity. I mean, I've played plenty of mascot horror games and pointed out what I liked and didn't like, but I never really thought about what kind of game I would make if I was given the opportunity. So that's what I'm going to do today. I'm going to make a rough blueprint of what I believe would make a good mascot horror game. And before we begin, I think it'd be best to define what a mascot horror game is. A mascot is a person, animal, or item that represents a group or an idea. So it stands to reason that it's a horror game that features a character fitting this description. From what I've seen in the past, this role is usually filled by one of the villains of the series, so that's what we're going to stick with in our game. But because having an iconic character alone isn't enough to make a good game, I'm mainly going to focus on the other part of the title. So with that out of the way, let's start with the setting. The setting is the central location our game takes place in, and it plays a huge part in setting the tone for our story. It's also something a lot of mascot horror games seem to take for granted. A majority of them seem to have this idea that having a scary game take place in a location that's not supposed to be scary is enough. However, this couldn't be further from the truth. Let's look at Poppy Playtime as an example. The first two chapters take place in a toy factory, a location that's normally full of color and energy, that's now the site of a horrific attack. But let's really look at this environment. It's mostly just gray concrete walls with random bits of color scattered all over the place. There's nothing really being conveyed by the environment other than the idea that something bad happened at some point. The only thing that builds suspense is when a monster shows up, but that's usually to indicate that an action scene is starting instead of building any suspense. So, what environment would work better for our game? Well, I actually think we could utilize the industrial environment to our advantage because the focus isn't going to be what we put in this environment, but what we put around the environment. We're going to have our game take place somewhere remote, like the middle of the ocean or in deep space, so the player is constantly surrounded by danger. This will help us build our suspenseful tone because we want the player to feel isolated and make them feel like they can't just leave whenever they want. We can also use this to create suspenseful scenarios without solely relying on our antagonist, like having the room slowly fill with water or start leaking oxygen, forcing us to find a way to escape. We'll also want several rooms in the starting area to appear normal to the player, so when they do find something horrific, it's much more impactful because it's something unsettling we haven't seen before now. We can also use this to draw the player's attention to important areas that we want them to explore. The facility could feature something like a bright and colorful bar that offers the player some feeling of comfort with all the colors and lights, or when they reach an area like the crew quarters, we can use the environment to humanize the former residents before finding out what happened to them. We want to have our environments providing a wide range of emotions for the player to experience rather than just fear. If the environment stays static the entire time, then it'll just become white noise because it's the same thing we've been seeing this entire time. We want to create an interesting environment to explore for our protagonist. We just created this spooky environment, but we need someone to explore it. That person will be our hero, or main character. And for our hero, we're going to do something most mascot horror games never do. We're going to give them a name and a personality. Look, I know, we're only in item 2 and I'm already committing blasphemy, but hear me out. It's common in most of these games to make our hero a mystery in hopes that players will try to figure it out using random clues throughout the game. The problem is, this creates a really boring character because the developers give us nothing to work with in fears that it'll spoil the surprise. Take something like Indigo Park. We're given a vague idea that we're here looking for a missing family member, but the intro is over so fast that unless you're like me and you record the intro and later go back and watch it in slow motion and scan every screen, then you'll probably miss most of it like I did the first time. And even then, there's still so many questions like, why would I go alone to this abandoned amusement park? Or why would I stick around after nearly getting mauled by a lion? I have no reason to root for this hero because I don't know what their goals or motivations are or why they would keep pushing forward. The only reason I can think of is the fact that they're a video game character and I'm playing a video game and I'm pushing forward on the analog stick, which, I mean, come on. Instead, let's look at Dead Space, which features a well-written protagonist despite the fact that it doesn't speak the entire game. Right off the bat, we learn that his name is Isaac Clarke, and along with his job to investigate the Ishimura, we find out that he's looking for his girlfriend who was last seen aboard the ship. These two pieces of information do wonders in having our protagonist feel human and understand his motivation to go through everything he does. There's no greater mystery of why is he really here or what does he really know. He's just a guy looking for his missing girlfriend while trying not to die. We don't need to rewatch gameplay at quarter speed or solve any kind of cipher just to figure out something like what is his name. Instead, we get to solve mysteries while playing the game, like what happened to the crew, or what created these monsters? Look, I know I sound condescending, but I think game developers vastly overestimate how many people playing their games actually want to do a ton of work outside of the game just to try to solve a mystery for a random bit of information that's not even relevant to the actual story. So, our main character will have a name and a well-defined motive right from the beginning. This motivation doesn't have to be their final goal, we just need some justification to why they keep pushing forward into the horrors instead of just leaving, like a sensible person would. I think our opening would be similar to Dead Space, where we show up to a facility to perform maintenance before getting trapped and having our objective be just to survive and escape. This might not seem like much, but it's something that everyone can relate to. If I was trapped somewhere with a terrifying monster, all prior objectives would go out the window, because if I'm dead, then none of my other problems matter. You can also create several tense moments with this motivation, like we could come close to escaping, only for it to come crashing down, sending us back to square one. Or maybe because basic operations are no longer being performed, we need to perform emergency maintenance before the facility gets destroyed. We don't need to try to save the world or defeat some evil scientist with a convoluted plan. We can tell a really good story just focusing on desperate people trying to stay alive and escape a threat, which leads us to gameplay. We can't have a game without gameplay, so what would we be doing in our game? Will we have puzzles, platforming, competitive baking? Well, before we get in the primary gameplay loop, we have to figure out something important first. We need to discuss the introduction to our game. After all, the first 2 hours will determine if a player sticks around or if he requests a refund. And for our intro, we're going to do something a bit different. Most horror games get so excited to show you all the scary stuff they have that they end up overloading the player with it. We want to start off with a much slower burn as we slowly build this unsettling feeling that something is wrong. Let's stick with our protagonist being a maintenance worker for this example. We could start our game by having our character show up to this facility to do some maintenance tasks, like fixing electric panels or repairing hatches. This can be an opportunity to teach our players some of the gameplay mechanics and get to know our protagonist in a more natural way. We'll want to wait until we've completed a few tasks before we slowly start introducing the unsettling aspects of our game and have our character react accordingly. Most people who see a pool of blood in the middle of the floor won't keep investigating. They'll want to run away and try to find help. So we'll do that. We'll have our character panic and run away at the first sign of danger, only to find out that they're trapped, forcing them to continue forward. We'll want to slowly introduce the creepy aspects rather than showing them all at once. Then, when we do go big with something horrific, it'll have a major impact because it's something we aren't used to seeing. So, now that we have the intro out of the way, what happens next? Are we going to have puzzles, stealth sections, a cooking contest? Honestly, any of these levels would work great in our game. Well, except maybe that last one. As long as we do one important thing, we don't want to break the immersion. The main feeling we want the player to feel is powerless. If we're able to easily defeat enemies at every turn, then there's no reason to be afraid of them. In Resident Evil 2, you have no real reason to fear the individual zombies because they're pretty easy to take down. So, the game developers introduce a new enemy called Mr. X. No, I'm not calling him Tyrant. Bullets have no effect on him, and the best you can do is temporarily slow him down at a large cost of resources. Your best bet is to run away while he chases you, trying to find a way to escape, and that's what we'll want to copy. Introduce a foe to hunt the player down that can't be defeated with traditional means. We can introduce items like flare guns or flashbangs that'll stun him, but they'll only be used for last minute escapes. Then, if we do at a level where we can defeat him, it'll feel like a major accomplishment because we're able to stop something that's been chasing us for so long. But the only way we can build up to that feeling is if we have a truly great threat after us. Yes, we're going to need to have one hell of a antagonist. Ah yes, what is a mascot horror game without the mascot? But it's here we have to break our most important rule that we've established for our mascot horror game. For in our game, The antagonist will never truly be seen by the player. No, I'm not talking about ghosts or a feeling or anything like that. I mean it'll be a monster that constantly hunts us from the shadows. To show what I mean, let's look at the 1979 film Alien, which actually demonstrates a lot of the points I've brought up so far. Oh yeah, skip here if you don't want me to spoil the movie. The movie starts out with a really slow build of us getting introduced to the characters and the world around us. Then, when the crew touches down on an alien planet, the unsettling elements are slowly introduced. They find an egg which contains an alien called the Facehugger that attacks one of the crew members named Kane. We're given false hope when the Facehugger dies and Kane returns back to normal, only for it to all culminate into this one legendary scene where the alien finally bursts from Kane's chest in a violent display before running off. This first kill is brutal and does a great job at building a feeling of terror. The suspense then builds as we watch the alien slowly pick off the crew one by one, and it works so well because we never get a good look at the xenomorph. It's all close-up shots and hard to distinguish attacks, making us fill in the gaps with our imagination, which is exactly what we want the player to do with our antagonist. We want the player to only have a vague idea of what this threat is. The unknown is one of the most important tools in the horror arsenal, and we want it to be our greatest strength in this game. We'll want to give breadcrumbs of the monster's ability so the player has an idea of how to survive encounters with it, but we'll keep changing them to keep the players on their toes. We could also introduce red herring monsters that the player does get to see and defeat, only to find out that they were just a minion or a weaker form of the main monster. This constant focus on the unknown and the sheer relentlessness of the monsters is how we're going to develop our antagonist. But Donut Nebula, how will we make plushies and merch of our mascot if we never get to see it? I am not making a scary game to slap a stupid character on merch. I am making a scary game to make a scary game. So, let's tie everything together and see what we got for our elevator pitch. Our game stars a technician named Michael Frost. He and his teammates Frank and Joe are sent to an oil refinery in the middle of the ocean to perform emergency repairs after receiving a malfunctioning notification. The team travels by helicopter and lands at a nearby helipad. They aren't greeted by anybody, but that doesn't come as a surprise since they aren't looked upon favorably by the crew of the refinery for being outsiders. After a few repairs, Michael notices something suspicious. He finds a room with a pool of blood on the floor. Startled by this, he runs out of the room only to find that the door is blocked. He gets a call from the other mechanics and finds out that they've also encountered horrible things. They all then decide that they need to leave immediately and get help. However, they find out that their helicopter has been destroyed. The characters then decide that they need to find a phone or another person or something, and that's where the real game begins. Sometime later, Michael enters a dark room, walking slowly towards a flashlight on the other side. He hears something moving around in the dark, but he can't quite make it out. Then, when he picks up the flashlight and looks around a bit, he sees a bright yellow eye staring at him. He accidentally shines the light at it and it runs away after being blinded. This is our first main encounter with the creature. We can't make out the shape of it in the dark, but we can see something moving around, with our only method of defending ourselves being to find one of its eyes and blind it. It's to teach us how to use the flashlight and how to find the creature in the dark. We see a rough shape of what it looks like in the darkness, and when we finally do escape the room, at the end of the section, we'll try to slide a door shut while the creature slowly approaches. We then see the shape slowly change and grow as it approaches us. Right before it attacks us, the door slams shut and we narrowly avoid death. It's in this moment we learn two things. We aren't alone on this refinery, and whatever's here is hunting us. And that's my pitch. It definitely needs some work, but it's what I would want to make if I had the chance to make my own game. Feel free to let me know what you thought in the comments below, and if anyone actually wants to make this into a game, I mean, I won't say no to being a producer, but thank you so much for the question. I had a lot of fun brainstorming ideas and would love to do more videos like this in the future. Let me know what you thought in the comments below, and don't forget to like and subscribe, and I'll see you in the next video. See ya!